Hey, and welcome to TSOB. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who are interested in investing or starting their own funds. We are Adam Anderson and Zach Eikenberry. Join us to get a behind-the-scenes look at the relationships between founding entrepreneurs and the VCs that invest in them. Hi.
Hello.
This is TSOB, where Zach Eikenberry and Adam Anderson talk about lots of stuff, but mostly businessy stuff. And why the hell are we doing this? Who are we trying to help?
Listen, I like your intro. What happened to your intro?
It happens all the time.
Join Zach Eikenberry and Adam Anderson as we discuss all things entrepreneurial when it comes to fundraising and launching and starting businesses.
Yeah. We're for entrepreneurs who want to consider growing and scaling their company or leaving being the entrepreneur and coming. I think it's interesting that whenever we try to put somebody in a box, I feel like if you're your first 10 years of entrepreneurship or first years of investing, right, you can probably fit comfortable into a box with a label. But if you're in the game long enough, you've jumped into all the boxes. And I don't think we have a name for what is a person who invests, who starts companies, who does capital allocation, who does I think they're called wealthy. I don't know. I think that's called a family office or what.
Yeah, like when the only unexplored geography, right, at this point in time in human history is either space, like outer space, or like technology spaces. And like there probably is a level of like medical spaces, but I'm saying like medical devices, medical technology, all that. But like this is where the people who are saying, I don't know, let's figure it out.
That's right.
All live.
Yep.
And not everybody is suited for that world, but there are people jumping in and out of it, working through it. And I think, when you live in that space where it's far more like for me and you, I assume, I'll say for me, I am far more comfortable living in a world in which I have to navigate creating my own income, figuring out which problems I want to solve, how I want to allocate my time, challenges with my own mindset as I navigate that. I am far more comfortable there than any sort of comfort that might come from a steady paycheck, clear expectations.
Oh man, a steady paycheck terrifies me. I like the security of a steady paycheck. I just want to be responsible for building that security because, the idea of working in a mega corp or a large corporation or even a small business where I don't know and I don't have control, then I could be fired at any moment. And so my family's security is 100% based off of, does the boss like me, or does some CFO, when he's looking at a spreadsheet, when he's trying to get an extra 2% profit, and I've got a big fat salary, cutting that head count, that to me is terrifying. And so, I think people drift into the business building side of it, whether it's capital allocation, entrepreneurship, whatever, because they don't fit in that particular world very well, or it's something that doesn't. By the way, you look wiser. Did you add gray to your beard, or did you just finish raising money and closing a round?
Yeah. You also look like you've been trying to raise capital as well as.
That's right. I'm 32 years old, bro. It's been a hard 20. COVID. These years are hard.
You're a crypto bro at this point. This is how you're getting through the winter.
Man, it's been okay. I was so rich, man. I used to show everybody my Coinbase, my wallets, and all my stuff, and now, I'm not going to mock the crypto bros because I might need to raise money from them one day when they get all their money back. You guys got this. Hang in there, bro.
Down with fiat.
Fiat. DeFi for the win. We were actually talking to some folks in Kuwait about the digital transformation that they're doing. And, there's so much room to make the world a better place without having to go all the way to DeFi. It's like basic blocking and tackling, business processes, digital e-commerce, all that stuff. Most of the world is not ready for a DeFi. Although, if you look at places like in Southeast Asia, where something like only 20% of the population has a bank account and everyone else just transfers stuff. So I think there's a world for DeFi. I think that that's really interesting, but it's not my favorite subject.
I think you're tagging into something that I think is very interesting, especially with like economic uncertainty and headwinds, whatever that is. Like, it still doesn't feel recessionary, but I think everybody's kind of slowed down decision making right now, or at least decision makers have slowed down decision making in 2023. DeFi might be an extreme. It's kind of like AI is an extreme. Like, for us to move completely to AI, where we're first going to go through a phase of hyper productivity, where we're not going to replace developers. We're going to make every developer 10x.
That's right.
Through AI, right? And you're going to go through a stage of hyper productivity before you start to see job loss and shift, etc. Probably the same with like the cryptocurrencies or DeFi, Web3, where it's pushed us beyond, Fed managed fiat currency ideas to something that is hyper productive and allows for a lot more people to have access to the capital markets, capital systems, very quickly, and there'll be hyper growth there. And then we'll come back. And I do think that people that are under threat for this increase in productivity that I think a recession will drive are the middle managers. And I think, so going back to our original point about comfort, like, when you're faced with joining a corporation, if you do not have a direct path to the executive suite and you're not a key individual contributor, the middle management layers are thinning out in technology and high growth companies. And they almost have to. And it's an unintended consequence of distribution and remote workforces, right? Like, when you can't show your value to two sides, to your bosses above you and to your team below you, and you have to do it in a distributed way, like, eventually the executives start to say, hey, these individual contributors are key. Why don't we leverage what they have, decrease the bureaucracy, allow them to push? And I think for a while, middle management layers held companies hostage, especially in Silicon Valley. And Elon comes along and Twitter, and he brings in the Tesla model, which thins out all the middle managers and goes directly to the highly productive and influential individual contributors and say, what do you want to ship? What have you been trying to do?
Yeah.
And gives them direct access to the most prized thing in any technology company, which is the roadmap. And said, all right. So I'm tying three things together, but I think you're going to see hyper productivity coming up in the next year or two, through like DeFi, AI, but also through the thinning of middle management bureaucracies in large organizations.
So
that's my pontification.
That was a fantastic pontification, and I'm going to completely blow by it. I want to talk about the cartoon My Little Pony and its impact on my life. No, actually, I want to circle back to what you said. There are three things that are the levers that need to be taken into account. That is about, do I have a job in the next 10 years with this disruption through AI and right? And the thing that you have to understand, not you, I assume you know this. God, I hope you do, because you make a lot of money to run a company. This is for the unwashed masses who do not. Okay, so you don't lead with what people there are and what do I do with them. I mean, usually you could start with the people around you, but and when you look at Elon ripping out the middle managers and going to the people, you could get confused and think that he's going to the people because the people are the value, and that's what Elon did was he changed business systems and processes and then found the right people to fit into his new model. So when you said he brought the Tesla model in, That is him bringing in business systems that he knows produces results he wants, processes that run inside of those systems, and then fitting the right people to those processes. And so as disruption comes, as you go from productivity to hyper productivity because you're leveraging an AI or something like that, I agree with you that there's going to be that season of hyper productivity. And then the reason why you're going to lose your job isn't that you're not hyper productive. It's that the business systems are changing, which means the processes are changing. And then it doesn't matter how hyper productive you are because the system's different. So if you're going to survive a wave of disruption and all you do is focus on being a key individual contributor in a particular wheelhouse, that is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, the pool that you get to operate inside of, because as the business systems change and they shift, your opportunities become less and less. I think about worked with a giant grocery store once. Every single one of their point of sales device was still ran on a mainframe using a coding language called Rex. $70 billion worth of revenue on some old ass code that nobody knows how to support, except for some guys who are like, I remember when we started coding against the redcoats. Yeah, so for those of you, because I know we have an international audience, the redcoats, those are people from Boston. No, they're not. I don't know why I said that. Tampa. We'll go with Tampa. Anyway, I feel like I said important things there.
I think you did, right? Because I would actually frame it as individual contributors are gambling at that point. So you're either going to take the value of your job to 0 or take the value of your job to 1,000, right? Like the people who know Rex coding, like became immeasurably valuable in the organization. The people who, when the company continued to get realigned and automate their POS, like those became marginally valuable and decreasing marginal value around the edge, and they dropped, right? So as an individual contributor, you have to figure out, I think right now, do you understand AI and technologies enough to be able to embed them, incorporate them, and change your output? And if you do, you're a more valuable individual contributor. If not, you're risking your job value going to 0.
That's right.
And that, I think, like you and I talked about some of the AI stuff. One of my favorite quotes is, what is it? Lawyers won't lose their jobs. Lawyers who don't use AI will lose their jobs, right?
Oh, yeah. There's only 2 kinds of lawyers: a lawyer who's super effective using AI, and then a lawyer who used to practice law.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. So you said it clever.
I said it. I when you said clever, I hope you meant better, because that's what I felt happened.
Okay.
When are we doing this live? I feel like I feel like we need to be like rent out like an auditorium in like a high, I don't know where we go, but I'm picturing like 6 people all checking their phones during the entire time. And I wanted that to be like where we start, is like nobody cares and everyone's sitting in the audience, and we're making ourselves laugh, and every once in a while like some old dude in like the middle of the auditorium that's empty will go.
Well, I do want to. I don't know if you have an agenda today. I think this kind of back and forth is incredibly valuable, because what we're doing is we're leaning into some future state that we're talking about. Like, what do we predict will happen? What do we believe are the conditions that are upon us that are changing? And we're bringing about, like you're bringing about your insights into business systems, processes, and how to navigate within those, right? And where we sit, we actually get to play and build business systems and processes.
That's right.
And so we're constantly evaluating what that looks like for ourselves and for our team. And for, I think you and I both, one of the reasons we're 2 stones is because we enjoy a good epiphany, good insight. And we like to take those aha eureka moments and apply them to the tools or not tools, I'm going to say sandboxes that we get to play in.
Sure.
But and so I think that's really valuable. I do want to turn to something that you were better than me at, which is
Still am
you don't have,
probably.
which is you and I were talking about lessons learned. So
Oh, well, I
we
don't agree with that statement being like yeah, let's dive into that. But you said I was better, and I usually take that. I'm very comfortable being better. But I thought that your stuff was very telling as well, because I think it came when I assume we're going to go through our top 5, right? And the things that you kind of put down, it almost was like a therapy trauma response where you were doing, this is what I've learned based off of the pain that I have recently felt. Right.
Mhm.
And you're the frontline guy. You're the guy who's raising the money, talking to the lawyers, doing the stuff. You're the CEO. So you gave me very good and accurate. This is what I learned as a CEO who's been in the thick of it and is coming off the front line. Where I feel like what I was able to provide was, what did I get by watching the whole system and seeing it from a different point of view? And so I don't know that I would say better. I would just say that we definitely have different perspectives on those lessons learned. But yeah.
Yeah, as an aggregate hot take on your list, I think that's exactly right, because yours is abstracted to a level that can be applied to other companies.
And yours was just bitching.
Yeah, mine is like, hey, if you're ever doing a security wear at a startup and trying to raise money in 2023,
Yeah.
this is
This is
some
what I've
lesson.
learned. Well, do
Yeah.
you want to go through them?
Yeah, you want to? How about
Why don't we do?
for sake of time?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to offer that we pick our favorite 2 or 3, and then we just go one at a time, back and forth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think just read it. Just bring up your text message,
Right.
and just read the things that you say, and then I'll read the things that I said, and then we'll pick 2 or 3. You choose some of the ones from my list that you like, and I'll choose some from yours that I like.
All right. So, on the topic of what are the biggest mistakes or things that we've learned thus far in creating startup businesses?
Yeah, this is inspired by a Jason LinkedIn post. That was
yes.
Okay. Keep going.
That's right. So, a few things on my list right now. Hiring people, these are mistakes. Hiring people who aren't 100% committed to the team and vision.
Mm-hmm.
Believing all accountants and attorneys are the same. That's number 2.
Yep.
Number 3, mistaking trust for accountability.
That's juicy.
Number 4, falling into the VC hype cycle.
Oh, that's a tough one.
And 5, letting competitors live in my head rent free. 5 mistakes that I have made especially in the recent season of Hook Security, but mistakes I've made in building Hook Security.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love all those. Those are definitely, I can almost see the emotional scars on your soul. I mean, I tell people though, if you look at the 30 odd businesses that I've launched or invested in, I can point at 2 or 3 emotional scars from each one that I will never repeat again. And actually, it's a detriment, because I refuse to take risks in those areas again. I refuse to let myself even explore that. All right, let's get into my list. So, I looked at, when I think about the mistakes, I think about the struggles we had, and I think about what I could have done or what I should do. So that's what this is in the spirit of. So network more in the right circles, so I'm not held prisoner to my narrow scope of investors. Right.
So the mistake was you were held too closely to a narrow scope of investors.
Yeah, it kind of goes into the hype cycle.
Okay.
Right. And I thought, well, these are the only, if I just follow this path, this is what I need. And then and if you look at the money that we raised, almost none of it was based off of the traditional VC stuff. It wasn't until the very, very end. And so my conclusion was, I should have been networking more with high net worth people who are wildly excited about changing the world, and they believe cybersecurity is a tool. If I spent my time with them, we wouldn't have had any problem raising money. It's so my mistake was not networking with the right people who will invest. Right. Lack of leadership on the board, resulting in lack of support for the CEO. So as chairman of the board, what I saw is that you were showing up and you were giving us status reports, but you had some real powerhouses on the board, and I didn't fill the role of activating them. Like, I misused the board. I didn't know how to use the board effectively. And so that was a big mistake, not using the board effectively. Number 3 was personal financial health, right? Sometimes in entrepreneurship, I let myself get in a bad way from my personal cash flow. Like, we're super wealthy on paper, but you don't buy groceries with stocks. And that put me in a fear state for a lot of the decision making. And that's not always the right. If you're trying to build a giant big thing, you really need to have your personal financial health in order. And I let that get away. Physical and mental health. There's real serious stints of depression and just like I couldn't show up as my best self. I was surviving this process, not thriving and being additive to it. So I was a victim the entire time, and a lot of that came from stop taking care of myself physically, and I absolutely stopped taking care of myself mentally. And then my last one was focusing. I didn't focus focus off the court creates focus on the court, or results on the court. So my mistake was, even when I wasn't doing this stuff for Hook, I should have been thinking about the stuff for Hook. Right? There's things I could have planned my off the court activities better so that I can have better results when I'm actually on the court, if that makes sense. So I went into details on those when we meant to go back and forth on it, but
no, I think that's really helpful because it framed what mistakes you thought that you had committed, the errors you committed in that. So, I guess I'd be most curious about your personal, financial, physical health side, and your networking piece, because I think we could dive into like how to activate a board and what have you, but I'm curious because we had a number of conversations about networking, fundraising, etc., and we had a number of conversations about personal financial health and stuff. It's not like there's a blind spot there on either of these. But I'll let dealer's choice. You pick which subject would you'd really like to dive in on. But those are the 2 nominations I have. I think would be great to tease out.
Well, let's talk about the networking first. The networking, the whole saying is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the next best time is right now. We successfully raised money, and we did it based off of the networks that you had, and that was it. Traditional, here's my deck, that didn't work. The way we raise money is you had a network of people that you had built that were fans of yours, and they decided that you were worth investing in, and then people followed, right? So this kind of goes into your investor hype cycle, but not really. I think for your hype cycle, you're talking about the trends that every VC gets excited about. But if you're going to raise a Series A, and you're going to raise a C, well, let me rephrase that. So let's take example. If I'm trying to do my space stuff, the fastest and best way for me to raise money is to go network with people who write checks for space and become a trusted resource and a trusted member of that community, and stay there for 2 years, providing all kinds of amazing positive experiences. And then offhandly say, I think I'm going to start a space whiskey company. Oh, bro, that's the coolest. You should totally do that. I'm in. That's how you raise money. And you can't, and unfortunately, if you have a great idea and you're like, I got this great idea and I got to do a thing, then unfortunately you miss the window and you can't do the networking because you want to make it happen now. And so the lesson I've learned, the mistake that I made, was not doing the timing correctly of understanding how do I build that network of people so that when it's time to do the business and it's time to raise the money, I've already established the beachhead in it. So it's almost made me think that entrepreneurship is a slower game than I think. Maybe that's a different way of, maybe a better way of putting it. It's a marathon with a bunch of sprints in the middle of it.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, throughout this entire process, I did watch you jump on a plane and go network. I mean, Kentucky to Tampa to you go down to Charleston and Myrtle, like, or up to DC. Like, there was always a networking, meeting people. But perhaps what you're teasing out here is this idea that you showed up with some sort of need or want.
Yeah, an
from
agenda.
people, an agenda, which is a middle ground people don't know what to do with, right? Like, you can show up and be vulnerable with something that they could help you with, right? Which is, I need advice. Here is my deck. Here is my thing. I need intro, or not. I need intros. You have to be more and more specific. The clearer you make it, like, I need 2 people that we know will get behind this.
That's right.
And so, right, that's a different type of request and need. And the other is, actually what I need from you is I need peers. I need colleagues to go about this journey with me. And I'm collecting a tribe of people, which might be your network, and say, like, what I actually don't need anything from you except for who you are, which includes, like, I need a person to go have a nice steak dinner with. I need a person to go golfing with. I need a person to play poker. These are just activity-based things.
Sure.
So, like, you know, because that's what I've been teasing out and thinking in my head is, now that there's a little bit of breathing room at Hook Security, like, what activities can I do and invite people to?
Yeah.
To build my quote unquote my network. And how can I show up and not need them to write me a check? Instead, what I need from them is their just sincere feedback and relationship.
That's
And
it.
I don't have an agenda with them, because I think I get annoyed when people show up to me with agendas. I don't care if they show up and they're vulnerable and have issues.
Oh no.
Fine.
Matter of fact, it triggers the human is triggered to help somebody with vulnerability and issues. That's why the society functions.
That's right. Yeah, I'm not a narcissist in that way, believing everybody serves my needs. But
aren't you though? A little bit, aren't you? Just a little bit.
If I am, I'm not good at it. Should I improve my narcissism?
Well, that's a different episode. We'll work on
that. So that's my suspicion is, how do you show up and say, hey, I'm coming to Louisville, and guys, tonight I'm trying to find 5 people to play poker with and have a great steak dinner. Who do you know?
Yeah. So here's what I'm not comfortable with. The reason we don't do the behaviors. So, for example, I should be going to the Kentucky Derby in 2 weeks and there's a 3-day thing, and I should just go there and enjoy all of these people who I'm about to meet. And that should be what I do, without an agenda, but they meet me, they know me, they like me. And I keep showing up for 2 years in those circles. And in my head, I'm like, oh man, that's $980, 3 nights at the hotel. Is that really the how I should be spending the money and spending my time and da, 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 da. And I find that the networking behaviors that are the way we just describe them, when you show up without an agenda and you build relationships, they almost seem bad. Like, you should be doing the hard thing, call 100 people, cold call, do the work you're doing. So it's like, by the way, I've decided just now talking, I've got to go to Kentucky Derby. So I hope the Brex card's got room. We're going to it's fine. You're invited, but you shouldn't go. We only need one of us there. So I think so. If you think about your number one job as a CEO going forward, after you've gotten the funding and you know you're probably either going to get another round or you want to be prepared to get one if you need it or whatever, a big chunk of your time should be building your network. A big chunk of your time should be upgrading and making sure Hook Security has options in 2 years rather than, well, I guess I got to start talking to VCs.
So I think we might be talking about two different things that are a little nuanced here. There's like the inner circle network that you build, that people know you and you know them.
Yep.
As humans. And then there is a transactional network, right? And what I had assumed you were talking about is this intimate network.
No, I am.
But the intimate network leads to opportunities to do the transactional.
That's what I'm saying.
So then you say, guys, I'm about ready to launch a campaign.
Who do you know?
I've queued up 1,000 people in this list. I've highlighted some that I think you might have overlap with. Let me know if there's anybody in this list. I really appreciate it, guys. As always, I'm going to make room for you all first, but here's what I'm planning on doing. And then you show them the list of 1,000 that you're going to do cold outreach to. Like, you still have to do transactional work.
You do.
But you're talking about the inner network that you can comfortably, like on a peer network, a group. And, I think that was one of the things that, as a mastermind, like having a group of people that are very close to you that can help you with those things. Like, there's operational masterminds working with other CEOs and the like. And I think that's still probably the most valuable piece, because all you're trading is advice and insight and trying to build shortcuts with each other.
That's right.
But there's probably still a level of, this is why I'm teasing it out with you. I've been thinking about, how do I build my inner network? Even I'm down in Lakeland, Florida. It'd be the first network down here, apart from like citrus growers. And I'm not even joking. I'm aware of a citrus grower, like heavy equipment machining poker game.
Yeah. No, look, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think the core mistake is trying to go into those transactional networks without the support of the relationship network. And my big mistake was I did not build the relationship network. All of those networking events that you listed that I got on planes and fly to was because somebody invited me in and I went in cold and I was networking with a bunch of people and I never followed up and I never went back. One shot, sales pitch, get out. That is not the way you do business. And you have to call your shot. You have to say, like, you've raised your hand and say, you know what? I'm going to build a network here in Lakeland, Florida. And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to focus on the relationships. I don't have an agenda. Just know I want to hang out with people that I can help, that can help me, and that we can get joy from being around each other, and some of the isolation that we're feeling when you're trying to do all this stuff. And I think that's perfect, right? And you've got that very locked in. And I know where I want to go. Eventually, I want to have a space empire. So I better be networking and going to the conferences and doing all that stuff. I know that I want to build brand new sciences for the human brain that Hook can use to go out and change the damn world. So if I look at the places I'm networking, am I setting myself up to be able to do the things I want to do in 2 years? Or am I doing transactional based networking where I'm just bumping into people trying to close a deal? And I don't, it came across judgy. We have to do the transactional stuff, but it's just so much better if you have the relationship already.
Well, I think it's very interesting. Perhaps one way to talk about it is vanity networking, right? Ooh. And vanity networking is a term that people use for like LinkedIn. And it's about like how many followers, connections. Oh, I want to be connected to you. And it's like the most shallow of transactions. It is follow, connect,
Oh, I can't wait.
But the idea of a vanity networking effect is you are incredibly busy with no outcomes, no changes in the world. And it's networking for the sake of networking. It's saying how many people you have in the pipeline. It's it's the worst way to do biz dev. And so
Yeah.
I used to add on my LinkedIn, a couple times a week. I would sit down and add, 25, 50 people I found interesting and connect with them and what have you. And, you know, I I've got a vanity network on LinkedIn where I think I have like 11,000 some followers. And that's not a big number for like the true influencers. But it's bigger than something like 98% of all LinkedIn users. And so I have a vanity network that I don't know, it has some impact. Don't get me wrong. It's helped us recruit a couple of people. It's helped us um, with a few like leads and opportunities online. Like businesses actually come from it. So I'm not discounting it to zero. But was it worth the effort I put in? No, there's a delta between the returns I've gotten and the time I put in, and that's just covered by my vanity.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing it's hard to understand the butterfly wings, right? You don't know what you're doing today that's going to help you with the next thing. And I feel like the better we get at predicting the things that we do today that is going to help us in 2 years, and we do those things, like, so you said you built a vanity network, that's gonna have a role in some way. But it's like if you only do one facet of networking, I'm almost picturing like multiple rings, right? You've got the ring of the relationship network, and maybe that's 20 people, folks that you can call and they know, and you've loved on them, and everything's good. Then maybe there's a thousand of the transactional based network, right? And then maybe there's 100,000 of the vanity network. And the thing is if you ignore any part of that, you know, target, right? It's going to be really hard. Well, you're probably more effective with the things you're trying to do if you have the relationships, the transactions, and the vanity networks all supporting each other, right? If you don't have the vanity network, that's going to limit some of the things you can do. And that's fine if that's not what you're interested in doing. If what you're interested in doing doesn't require a vanity network, fine. But the thing is, we're entrepreneurs. We don't know in 2 years if we're going to need a vanity network.
That's true. What I'm saying is the vanity network can't be substituted for your intimate network.
That is correct. That's the problem.
And so it's fine to have a vanity network. Like I imagine some of the high impact of my vanity network in the future will be one, it exponentially increases. Like once you have more followers, more people are willing to follow you.
Yeah.
Two, it's probably best because LinkedIn in particular is a tool for recruiting. I mean, it's still a resume-based site. And that will probably help us decrease and greater access to talent and people joining our team in the future. Three, the number of conference organizers and other folks are utilized and are always looking at LinkedIn for people who have a voice that they would like to participate in their conference. And so I imagine planting seeds today eventually allows us to have access to stages and audiences, which we can leverage through our vanity network. So like
that's right.
I'm just saying like there's a few different networks at play. And I also feel this intimate colleague peer-to-peer group, like the people I want to be around in a holistic sense, as humans, as business professionals, as people who have the same ethical frameworks that I do and same value judgments that I do. I want to have all those things line up for this group of people. Right.
Yeah.
And that's something to go search out and do. And it takes time to build that network.
So here's what I'm going to take from what you just said, from what we just said. The bird is the topic of networking. The two stones just beat the shit out of that bird. I'm going to turn that into an intentional plan for the next 2 years. I'm going to write down how am I going to nurture my relationship network, my transactional network, and my vanity network to make sure that I am having a well-balanced access to the people who I want to have access to and help them, et cetera, et cetera. Did I lose you, buddy? No, you're good. You're there.
I'm
Okay.
here. Yes.
All right, let's move on because I see we're using some time, and I want to look at some of your stuff. So yeah, that's my accountability. We're going to put a graph on the TSOB LinkedIn page that's going to show my plan. Check on me,
Can,
you 6 followers out there. Hold me accountable.
so I do think TSOB has an opportunity to build a network of relational folks, so people who resonate with the way we think
That
about
sounds
things.
fun. I want to do that.
So there's an opportunity there, and then there's an opportunity to recognize the vanity. And I say vanity, Ed. What I mean is like that we have passing value to people, that
Yeah.
we send out thousands and thousands of messages and opportunities and little ideas, and then maybe 1 or 2 of them stick with people, and they take it as a little nourishment along their journey, and they go on.
Yeah,
That's
we might need a different word than vanity network. That sounds a little, I don't know. It's not wrong. It's not wrong, but I want people to understand that even if they are at that outer ring for me, it's to me it's still important. I don't know, man.
No, it's authentic.
Yeah, it's
It's not.
authentic. I don't want. I think vanity feels like
Yeah.
it's unauthentic, and maybe that's my own head trash.
It's probably a thing to wordsmith over time. I was using a term that
I'll
other
ask
people use on
ChatGPT.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll just
Yeah,
ask ChatGPT. It'll be fine.
yeah.
All
So,
right,
say hi to our overlords when you do.
I will. I will. Well, they already hear us. Hi. I used to say hi to the CIA, but now I'm like, hey, whenever Overlord AI there is, who is already the CIA, says the conspiracy that I'm just started. I hope that really catches on. The Earth is concave, and the CIA is just an AI. So you have a bunch of them here, and actually, I love all of them. I want to dive into all of them, but I'm going to let you pick out of the bottom 3. Mistaking trust for accountability sounds so juicy. That sounds to me like then letting my competitors live in my head rent free. That's okay. I feel like and then the falling into the VC hype cycle. So which one would you like to talk about?
I could, I think letting competitors live in your head rent free is a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah.
It is. Whenever you decide that somebody is an enemy, right? They get to live in your head rent free because now they control a part about you. They control an emotional reaction.
That's right.
Got you when you decide that they are a competitor, they're unhealthy, they're an enemy, they're to be taken down. And when you do, you release control of part of your person. And I get it that the world is big enough for everybody to make money. That's fine. That's great. I actually don't care about that anymore, about what market share. I think market share is a very toxic thing to operate out of. That's why a lot of public companies do not do well, I think, when they consider market share. As I think what's more important is us to identify our ideals, ideal partners, or clients, partners, product roadmap, etc., that align to our vision and mission, and go pursue them and be 100% faithful to that group. And so with that, I've actually been free to go into like large enterprises and other opportunities because they're the ideal people I want to move the needle with. And so not because I'm trying to be competitive or hit big numbers and for revenue purposes, etc., which will be an impact of it, but I can make hundreds of millions of dollars selling $10 at a time too. Like the thing my ideal.
When I read that, you said something to me, or you sent something to me on a couple of days ago. Maybe I don't know. It's all blur. And it was about don't compete. Right? Am I you keep freezing, or I keep freezing, or oh my gosh, I don't know.
It is probably me.
That's okay. You look good when you're doing it. So the idea here of don't compete, create. And you can't go create if you're worried about competing. If you're worried and obsessed about your competitors and they're living rent free in your head and you're angry, and then it's like, how do I defeat them? Where if you're not worried about that, you're worried about creating, you can say, oh man, I love working with these people. What do they need? How do I help them? What is the cool, stuff I can do? I think when I read that, it was like, oh, that's the symptom of something that's preventing you from actually creating the most amazing company, from sailing into those blue oceans. I don't want to compete. I want to create, and I want to create new markets. That's how you build a $1 billion company. It's doing the thing that no one else is doing. So why in the world would I look at my competitors? And I think that falls into your VC hype cycle. We get really,
no, I think so. It does fall into VC hype cycle. But I was going through the connection between all three, and
well, then why don't I shut the hell up and
no? I think so. VC hype cycle to me was believing if you hit a certain set of parameters, then VCs, because of their signaling through various panels at conferences and blog posts, etc., that they would be obliged to invest in you, right? Like, and that is, I didn't expect them all to invest in me. I wasn't like naive in that way, but I did think that the pathway to investment would be clear because we had operationally de-risked. We have shown the execution of the ability to hit certain numbers, et cetera, which I argue that we did, right? Like, and no one argued with me about execution risk or operation risk. What was very frustrating to me was VCs, independent of the execution, said, well, how do we know you're different? Right. And I said, well, we're different because we're winning. and that killed the thing. But like, I believed in the hype cycle enough that I in my own head had whitewashed all of our flaws. And I got very frustrated when people would come and poke at those things.
Yeah.
And I would say, that's not the narrative I told you. And they're like, well, that's fine. But we don't know how you disrupt a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm not disrupting a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm winning against a multi-billion-dollar company. like I don't know. I don't care what they offer or how we're different. I care that we win and beat them. And on an execution level, like I'm trying not to go back into them living in my head rent free, but that was part of the hype cycle. But the other thing was, it's apparent to me as a founder that most VCs are speculators. And in speculation, you only care about your next potential markup, your next potential. They have a whole set of things, and we've talked about this before, that their LPs and all their other variables drive them towards misalignment with founders. And what has happened as a whole, as an aggregated industry, we talked to between last week and the very beginning, January 2019 of Hook Security, I have 460 meetings with the term intro, capital, venture, or funding. 460 intro meetings. And over the course of 4.5 years, we on our cap table today have 23 people who invested, institutions, individuals. That's exactly 5%. And what I've learned in that hype cycle is a couple things. One, we're an outlier. On average, any company that does get funding talks to just under 100 investors. So we did about 4.5x that. Two, why did we have to talk to so many people? Like, I think I bought into what they said without understanding what they meant. And the understanding the pressures that they are lemmings. Like they just are. I don't, I can be polite about it, but VCs are no smarter than the rest of the population of people and doing business, conducting business. They just have a set of variables, etc. And I'm not putting them down, but I'm not going to put them on a throne either.
That's
and they speculate and try to work with inside a set of parameters that are misaligned to us as founders.
Yep.
And when you believe in the magic of VC only to find out you just bought into a hype cycle, it really takes you out of the game mentally. And it probably would have been better off had I just not believed that hype cycle and stayed true to what we were doing and who we were. And focused, it would have, like, I guess my mistake, and it's something I don't know how I'd ever redo, is knowing what our true North Star was and is, our KPIs, what execution risk we wanted to do, instead of aligning to what the VCs I thought they wanted. And so I'm still processing that one. And I think what really threw the organization in a loop was that I didn't have that clarity in my head as to what were the important measurements and results we needed. I knew, everybody kind of knows it's top line revenue, but like it's ARR in the SaaS world. But I was trying to figure out how to hold people accountable, and I would trust that they would just like fill in the gaps when I didn't know what to ask them, and that they would make the best decisions. And so I made a big mistake in saying, like, I'm holding them accountable very lightly on purpose because I trust them. And what would happen is, we had salespeople come along, and even sales leadership, that said, look at all the things I'm doing. And I would say, like, that doesn't get us any closer to the results. But I didn't have my own mental clarity to say, the result is X. The delta between where we are today and X is where we need to have conflict, commit, and create a plan so we can hold each other accountable and go do that. Instead, I kept saying, guys, it's just not cutting it. What can we do? What can we do? And so I made a big mistake there. So transferring the KPIs that I was importing from the VC hype cycle into our company.
Yeah.
And then magically hoping my team would understand how to get us to this moving set of KPIs. Like, it would have been much better in the beginning if I just said, hey guys, OKRs, goal setting, etc., that's all fine. Here are our 3 North Stars. Here are the 3 things we measure against. Here's how we're going to measure them. This is what we're going to use for them, and align our company to that.
Yep.
And let's go conquer the world. Even if we miss opportunities, things fall apart, we incur operational debt in other areas, we know that these are the things we're going to do. I did not have that clarity of vision. I kept saying, like, oh, guys, I just heard about the rule of 40. Let's go talk about that and how we're measuring CAC against our overall value and the churn rates of our company. Like, I would bring in all this VC hype cycle because I was trying to be a company VCs would love.
That's it.
And it kept our company in a set of cloudy confusion. And that's a mistake.
It's almost like the VCs are sitting in your head the same way a competitor might sit in your head. And the big takeaway I'm hearing is careful what you let sit in your head. And you knew in your bones that you could trust the process because other people have gone through the process that are less worthy, less cool. They don't have the what we're doing, and you knew you had a superior company that had superior numbers, and you trusted the VC hype cycle, and you let that live in your head, and you built a company that would win based off of those, KPIs that VCs were telling you. And our lesson has been, yeah, you can build a really, really cool company that way. it's probably not the way we're going to build it going forward.
Yeah. I just saw a deal get done this month. They have less revenue than us in a tougher space. It's like medical device delivery on demand kind of thing. Right. And they have a lot more headwinds and issues. KPIs and infrastructure not built out. Team of 3 people doing $500,000 a year, maybe a little more. Projected to do 3 million this year. Just closed 6 million on a 20 million pre. And when they were asked the basic questions about this metric and this KPI, etc., and they'd be like, not applicable to us. And they were blunt, candid. Guess what? The VCs didn't care. They had a box to check, and somebody told them that box was dumb. They said, "Oh yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb. That's right." Like,
yeah. Sorry for asking. I'm still learning your space. I'm really
it's still learning your space. Yeah,
you're really excited.
You're doing really great. We're very excited about the opportunity to growth here. We see a lot of opportunities for upside and exit. So, how can we get back to the story you were saying?
That's right.
And I would take a different tack when somebody would be like, "So tell us about your CAC payback period." I'd say, "Oh, I just spent the last 3 hours last night working up late to get this number to you. So let's talk about that." And they would like, "Oh, cool." And the analysts would love us. And they'd sit there and they put in everything in the spreadsheet. So guess what? We got a lot of. We got a ton of second meetings, a ton of them, because I passed the analyst gatekeeping all day long. But what people don't tell you is the analyst will also pass through just a good story. And I spent hours building KPIs and metrics, etc., for them. And then we get to the second meeting. And the second meeting would be a lot more like, but how are you different from X? We don't really like ed tech. Why are we talking to you? How are you guys not a content company and a SaaS company instead? We think you're trying to bait and switch us. Which, those are the real conversations to have.
That's right.
And I showed up with execution de-risk. And it was part of the hype cycle. It created a bad management internal structure for our company. And like you just said, I think I let people live inside my head rent free. And that was a mistake.
Yeah. Well, and all that being said, you still slogged through and you got the job done. And the result of that is what I like to call operational debt. Operational debt is when you do a thing to make a thing happen that probably, that those systems and processes aren't going to work going forward, maybe, right? So what you've done is you've built this amazing company that runs very, very well, and it has all the systems and all the KPIs, and the operational debt that you're paying off in your own brain is, how do I unravel all of this VC hype cycle out of my head so that I can then make room to build a company that's profitable and grows and does all and hits all the things that we want to do? And the trap is going to be, I can just flip a switch and I'm done. The real answer is, it's going to take you 3 to 6 months of constantly checking in on your brain to say, who's living in my head? Am I building the company that's the company that we want to build? Am I still thinking about the VC hype cycle? Am I still trapped into, how do I even measure my KPIs effectively? And your challenge is going to be, now we have an institutional investor who sits on your board. And when you show up for board meetings, the institutional investor is going to default back to those check boxes. How are we doing with this? Because we got to get ready for the next raise, and we got to
That's right. So guess what we got? We got investors who were profoundly impressed by our capital efficiency, by our growth rate, by the metrics and the numbers.
Because that's what you were showing people.
So we get to live in this space where
so deep what you just said. Holy shit. It's worse than I thought. Oh crap.
It's true, isn't it?
And it's not bad, but now your job is to, and by the way, all the things you just said are fantastic, and we should keep doing that because that's a healthy company. That's a healthy company, being cash efficient, all the other things. But we're probably facing some pivots coming up. And those pivots may not line up with the cash efficiency, the hyper growth, and all the stuff. And so now your challenge is going to be, how do you bring these pivots of direction, these new aha moments back to a group that are like, well, we invested because we saw this, and we just want you to do this. So stop being clever and grow the company so that I can get a $20 million valuation in 18 months. Oh, well, that's why I'm not the CEO. That job sucks. Actually, I don't know that it sucks. I think it can be one of the most fun jobs in the world, because you do get to be the artist standing in front of the paint, with your paint standing in front of the canvas. And, you get to walk around and say, hey, do you like my painting? Hey, do you like my painting? Hey, do you like my painting? Eventually you realize you don't have to ask people if they like your painting, and you start ignoring them and paint what you want. And then the people who love your painting start peeking over your shoulder. And I think that's the opportunity you have now that you've got some breathing space, is to really, drop some of this weight from your shoulders, clear your head, and paint the company, paint the art that you want to paint. And then the right kind of people who are going to be that inner network of relationships are going to show up. And that's going to be your job for the next 2 years. Build the authentic company you want and attract the people that resonate with it. And ladies and gentlemen, this is TSOB. We're ending it on that note because I've been trying to hydrate a lot. And you don't drink 2 Nalgene bottles before a podcast and not get punished for it. So, besides, I think what I just said really summed up a lot of things.
That's right.
It was pretty good. I don't think it's going to get better. So I'm going to wrap us up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, this is really cool, man. I don't know what the hell we were going to talk about today, but this is all good stuff. Hey, and thanks for joining us for the TSOB podcast. Find us on LinkedIn and give us your hot take. The whole reason we're doing this is to get access to better conversations that help us up our game. And if you have something you want to share, we want to hear about it. Find us on the TSOB LinkedIn group and jump in with 2 feet. We can't wait to chat.